The slam of the front door was the last sound I heard from my childhood home as my father's words cut deeper than any blade. Get out, and don't come back until you're not a disgrace to this family. At just 19, Everett stood alone on the curb in suburban Cleveland, rain soaking his thin jacket, realizing his being gay had just cost him everything he had ever known. His backpack felt heavier than the world as he dialed the only number he could think of through shaking fingers. Grandma? It's me. I don't have anywhere else to go. Grandma Evelyn didn't hesitate. Within 2 hours, her old blue sedan pulled up, headlights cutting through the downpour like a lifeline. She stepped out, her silver hair damp but her arms open wide, and pulled him into a hug that smelled of lavender soap and safety. You're coming home with me, sweetheart. No questions, no judgments. Just you and me figuring this out. The drive to her modest house outside Columbus was quiet at first, the wipers swishing rhythmically while Everett stared out the window, replaying the shouting match that had ended his life as he knew it. His mother had stood there silent, tears in her eyes but no words of defense. His father had called him names that still burned in his chest. When they arrived at the small white house with the wraparound porch, Grandma made hot cocoa like she had when he was little. They sat at the kitchen table under the warm glow of the overhead light. I've always known, Everett, she said softly, her wrinkled hand covering his. A grandmother sees things parents sometimes miss. You're not broken. You're just you. For the first time in weeks, he let himself cry without fear of being heard. The next morning, she drove him to a local bookstore cafe in town where the owner was hiring part-time. New start, she said with a wink. And who knows, maybe you'll meet some good people. The cafe was cozy, shelves of books lining one wall and the scent of fresh coffee filling the air. Everett's first shift was a blur of learning the register and smiling through his nerves. Then Lucas walked in. Tall, with warm brown eyes and an easy laugh, he ordered a vanilla latte and lingered at the counter. You're new here, Lucas said, extending a hand. I'm Lucas. Work at the community center down the street. Welcome to the best hidden gem in Ohio. Their conversation was short but kind, and for the first time since the door slammed, Everett felt a tiny spark of something other than shame. Back at Grandma's that evening, he helped her with dinner, chopping vegetables while she hummed old songs. She didn't push for details about his parents, just shared stories of her own youth and how life had taught her that love came in all forms. The world will try to tell you who you are supposed to be, she said, sliding a plate of pasta his way. But only you get to decide. Everett nodded, the weight on his chest lifting just a fraction. Sleep came easier that night in the guest room that already felt like his. Over the next week, he settled into a routine. Mornings with Grandma, afternoons at the cafe, evenings reading books Lucas had recommended. Lucas stopped by almost every day, sometimes buying a muffin just to chat about movies or the latest local news. You seem like you've got a story, Lucas said one slow afternoon, leaning on the counter. Everett shrugged, not ready to share yet, but the way Lucas smiled made him wonder if maybe he could be someday. The small town felt less lonely already. Grandma noticed the change in him. That Lucas boy seems nice, she teased gently while they washed dishes. Everett blushed but didn't deny it. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a future where being gay didn't mean being alone. The days stretched into a fragile peace, but deep down he knew the peace was borrowed. His father's last text still sat unread on his phone. Don't drag your grandmother into your mess. Everett deleted it, but the words lingered like smoke. The first month at Grandma's passed in a quiet rhythm that Everett hadn't known he needed. Mornings started with coffee on the porch, watching the sunrise paint the fields gold while Grandma read her newspaper. She never pried, but her steady presence gave him permission to breathe. One Saturday, she took him to the farmer's market where neighbors waved and smiled without knowing his story. Felt normal, almost. At the cafe, his shifts grew smoother, and Lucas became a regular fixture, always finding reasons to stay a few extra minutes. You're getting the hang of that espresso machine, Lucas said one rainy Tuesday, sliding his usual latte order across the counter. His fingers brushed Everett's, accidental but warm. Everett laughed, a real laugh that surprised even him. Thanks. Grandma says I'm turning into a proper barista. They talked longer that day, about Lucas's work helping at-risk youth at the community center, and how he'd come out to his own family at 17. It wasn't easy, Lucas admitted, eyes honest. But it got better. People like us learned to build our own families. The words settled in Everett's chest like a promise. Back home, Grandma listened when he finally opened up about the night his father found the hidden texts on his phone. He called me every name in the book, Everett confessed over meatloaf. Said I was choosing this life to hurt him. Grandma set her fork down, her eyes steady. Your father carries his own fears, sweetheart. Doesn't make them yours. I raised him better than that, but life hardened him. She shared then about her late husband, how they'd faced their own hardships together, and how love was the only thing that ever truly mattered. You deserve to love whoever makes your heart feel safe. That night, Everett lay awake thinking of Lucas's easy smile. The next day at work, Lucas invited him to a low-key movie night at his apartment. Just friends, no pressure, he added quickly, reading Everett's hesitation. Everett said yes before he could overthink it. The evening was simple. Pizza, an old comedy, and conversation that flowed until midnight. When Lucas walked him to the door, the air between them felt charged but gentle. I'm glad you came, Lucas said softly. Everett went home with butterflies he hadn't felt since before everything fell apart. Weeks turned into a gentle dance of friendship deepening. They hiked local trails on weekends, Lucas pointing out birds and Everett sharing pieces of his past. One evening after a long shift, Everett broke down in the cafe stockroom, the weight of missing his mother hitting hard. Lucas found him there, pulled him into a hug without a word. You're not alone anymore, he whispered. Everett clung to that moment, the first time another man's arms felt like home rather than danger. Grandma's health seemed solid, but she tired more easily. She still made his favorite cookies and left notes on the fridge. Proud of you every day. Her support gave him courage to start therapy online. Small steps toward accepting the boy his father had thrown away. Lucas never pushed, just showed up consistently with coffee and patience. You've got this, he'd say when doubt crept in. Everett started believing it. Yet shadows lingered. A text from his mother arrived one afternoon. Your father misses you. Come home when you're ready to be normal. Everett stared at it until the screen blurred. Grandma found him on the porch later. Normal is overrated, she said with a wink, handing him lemonade. He laughed through the tears, and in that laughter he felt the first real crack in the armor of shame he'd worn for years. Summer heat settled over Ohio like a blanket, and with it came the first real test of Everett's fragile new world. The cafe was busier than usual with tourists passing through, and one afternoon a group of locals lingered at the counter longer than necessary. Their comments started light but turned sharp when they overheard Lucas joking about a pride event in Columbus. You one of those too? One man muttered toward Everett, loud enough for everyone to hear. The room quieted. Everett froze, the old fear rising like bile. Lucas stepped in smoothly, voice calm but firm. We're just here making coffee, folks. Hope you enjoy your day. The men left, but the damage was done. Everett's hands shook as he wiped the counter. That evening he paced Grandma's living room, replaying every word. What if they tell everyone? What if it gets back to Dad? Grandma sat him down with a cup of tea. People like that are loud because they're scared. You don't owe them your peace. Her words helped, but the sting remained. Lucas showed up later with takeout, sensing the mood. They sat on the porch swing as fireflies danced in the yard. I hate that you had to see that, Lucas said quietly. But I also know you're stronger than their ignorance. Their talk stretched late into the night, moving from fear to dreams. Lucas shared how he'd faced similar moments in high school and come out stronger on the other side. It doesn't erase the hurt, he admitted, but it teaches you who your real people are. When Lucas reached for his hand, Everett didn't pull away. The touch was simple, grounding, and for the first time he let himself lean into it. The next weekend they drove to Columbus for a quiet afternoon away from prying eyes. Walking through a park, Lucas pointed out a bench where he used to sit after tough days. "This town's small," he said, "but the world's bigger than our zip code." They talked about everything and nothing, laughter mixing with deeper confessions. Everett told him about the texts from his mother, the way silence from his parents hurt more than yelling. Lucas listened without fixing, just held space. Back at Grandma's, she greeted them with fresh pie and a knowing smile. "You two look like you solved the world's problems." Work became a safe haven again after the incident, especially with Lucas stopping by more often. One slow afternoon, Lucas slid a book across the counter. A memoir about queer resilience. "Thought you might like this." Their fingers lingered, and Everett felt the shift between them solidify into something tender and real. That night he told Grandma he thought he might be falling for someone. She hugged him tight. "Then fall, sweetheart. You've earned the soft landing." But tension simmered elsewhere. His father called Grandma one evening, voice loud enough for Everett to hear through the phone. "You're enabling him, Mom. He needs to man up." Grandma hung up gently but firmly. Everett saw the worry lines on her face afterward, though she waved it off. "Some people learn the hard way," she said. The confrontation left Everett restless, but Lucas's text that night reminded him he wasn't fighting alone. Slowly, the summer days wove their friendship tighter. They shared sunsets on the porch, quiet admissions under starlit skies. Everett's internal storm quieted with every kind word from Lucas and every affirming hug from Grandma. He was growing, learning that his heart wasn't a burden but a compass. Yet he sensed the calm was temporary, like the eye of a storm gathering strength just beyond the horizon. Autumn leaves painted the Ohio countryside in fiery reds and golds when Grandma's cough turned persistent. At first she brushed it off as seasonal allergies, but Everett noticed how she tired after simple tasks. One evening she sat him down, her hand trembling slightly as she held his. "Doctors say it's her heart." The words came later after tests. The news hit like a quiet thunderclap. Lucas was there the night Everett came home from the hospital visit, sitting silently on the porch steps until Everett was ready to speak. "She's all I have left," Everett whispered. Lucas pulled him close. "She's not all you have. Not anymore." The weeks that followed blurred into hospital runs and quiet evenings at home. Grandma insisted on keeping life normal, baking cookies between naps and teasing Everett about Lucas. "That boy's got eyes only for you," she'd say with a wink. Everett and Lucas took turns cooking, their shared routines becoming a lifeline. One crisp afternoon Lucas drove them all to a pumpkin patch, Grandma wrapped in a blanket in the back seat. Her laughter filled the car, and for a few hours the worry lifted. Back home she pulled Everett aside. "Don't let my getting old stop you from living, sweetheart. Love that boy if he makes you happy." Family tension escalated when his parents learned of Grandma's condition. His mother called, voice strained. "We should be there." Everett met them at the hospital, the reunion stiff and loaded. His father wouldn't look him in the eye, muttering about choices under his breath. Lucas waited outside, a steady presence Everett drew strength from. That night after his parents left, Everett broke down in Lucas's arms on the porch. "They still see me as the problem." Lucas held him tighter. "Then they're the ones missing out." Grandma's health declined steadily. She spent more time in her favorite armchair, sharing old photo albums and stories Everett had never heard. One evening she handed him a small key. "For the lockbox in the attic." "Not yet, but when the time comes." Her eyes held secrets he couldn't yet read. Lucas helped with groceries and yard work, his quiet reliability weaving deeper into Everett's heart. Their moments together grew more intimate in emotion if not touch. Late-night talks where Everett admitted his fears of losing the only unconditional love he'd known. The holidays approached with forced cheer. His parents visited again, the air thick with unspoken accusations. Grandma mediated as best she could, but the strain showed. One night after they left, she took Everett's hand. "Promise me you'll choose your own happiness, no matter what." He promised, throat tight. Lucas stayed over that night on the couch, the three of them watching old movies until Grandma dozed off. In the dim light, Lucas whispered, "Whatever comes, we've got each other." When the end came, it was peaceful. Grandma slipped away in her sleep 2 days after Christmas, a soft smile on her face. Everett sat beside her bed, Lucas's hand on his shoulder, tears falling freely. The house felt emptier already, but the love she'd poured into it lingered like warmth from a dying fire. Funeral arrangements began, and with them the return of his parents, their presence a storm cloud over the grief. The funeral was held on a cold January morning at the small church Grandma had attended for decades. Everett stood at the front in the black suit Lucas had helped him pick out, reading a eulogy that trembled in his hands. "She taught me that family isn't always blood. It's the people who choose you every day." His voice broke, but he finished, eyes finding Lucas in the second row, steady and proud. His parents sat rigid in the front pew, his father's jaw clenched. After the service they approached, his mother hugging him awkwardly. "She was proud of you," she said quietly. His father said nothing, just nodded once before turning away. The house felt too large in the days that followed. Everett moved through rooms touching Grandma's things. Her knitting basket, the photo of them on the porch last summer. Lucas stayed close, sleeping on the couch most nights, cooking simple meals and listening when the grief hit in waves. "She wouldn't want you drowning in this?" Lucas reminded him gently one evening as they sorted through old letters. Their hands brushed over yellowed envelopes, and Everett felt the pull toward something more than friendship solidify. "I don't know what I'd do without you," he admitted. Lucas smiled softly. "You won't have to find out." His parents returned the week after to discuss the house. "It's been in the family," his father said stiffly, eyes scanning the living room like he was already measuring drapes. Everett felt the old anger rise but kept it leashed for Grandma's sake. Lucas waited in the kitchen, a silent anchor. That night after they left, Everett and Lucas sat on the porch under a blanket of stars. "They want control because they lost it the day I came out," Everett said. Lucas nodded, then leaned in, their first real kiss soft and full of years of unspoken hope. It wasn't fireworks but homecoming, and Everett let himself sink into it. The days stretched with legal paperwork and quiet evenings. Lucas's presence turned the house from a place of loss into one of possibility. They cooked together, watched movies, and talked about the future Everett had once been too afraid to imagine. One afternoon Lucas brought flowers from the market. "For her," he said, placing them by the mantel photo. Everett pulled him into a hug that lingered, hearts beating in sync. But tension built as the reading of the will approached. His parents hinted at contesting things, their visits growing colder. Everett felt the pressure mounting, old wounds reopening. Lucas held him through the nights when nightmares of the slammed door returned. "You're building something new," Lucas whispered. "With me, if you'll have me." Everett nodded against his chest, the words healing cracks he thought permanent. The fire came 2 nights after the will was scheduled. Everett woke to smoke alarms screaming, flames licking up the old wiring in the attic. He and Lucas barely escaped, coughing in the front yard as sirens wailed closer. Neighbors gathered while firefighters battled the blaze. In the chaos, a firefighter emerged with a small metal box, the one Grandma had given him the key for. "Found this in the wall. Looks important." The house was a charred shell by dawn, but the metal box survived. Everett sat on the curb with Lucas, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, the key trembling in his hand. His parents arrived shortly after, faces pale under the emergency lights. "Everything's gone," his mother whispered, but Everett's focus stayed on the box. Inside were letters, yellowed and tied with string, plus a handwritten will dated months earlier. Grandma's elegant script filled the pages. The first letters were from Grandpa's brother, Everett's great-uncle, a man his family had never mentioned. They told of love for another man in the 1950s, of being disowned by his own parents, of a life cut short by despair. Grandpa had kept the secret, passing the pain down. Then came his father's handwritten note from years ago, admitting he'd known about the uncle and chosen silence out of fear it would taint the family name. The final pages were Grandma's. Her love letter to Everett, explaining she'd always known his truth and fought quietly for him. The will left the house and everything to him alone, with a note, "Choose your own family, sweetheart. I already did when I chose you." His father read over Everett's shoulder, face crumpling as the truth burned brighter than the fire. I thought I was protecting you," he choked out, the first crack in years of stone. Tears streamed down his face. From what happened to him? Everett stood, the papers shaking in his hands. "You protected your fear instead of me." Lucas stepped beside him, hand on his back, silent strength. The confrontation was raw but necessary, years of pain spilling into the cold morning air. His mother sobbed quietly, reaching for her husband who finally broke. In the weeks that followed, insurance slowly processed claims, but the real healing happened in small steps. His parents began tentative visits, his father attending a support group Lucas recommended. Everett sold the land and used the money to start fresh with Lucas in a small apartment in Columbus. The bookstore cafe offered him full-time, and Lucas's community center work flourished. Their relationship bloomed openly now, walks in the park hand in hand, quiet nights cooking together, laughter replacing old silence. Everett visited the charred lot one last time, laying flowers where the porch once stood. "Thank you," he whispered to the memory of Grandma. Lucas waited in the car, patient and loving. The journey had broken him, reshaped him, and finally set him free. He was no longer the boy on the curb in the rain. He was a man who had chosen love over fear. True or false? Family love is unconditional only when it fits societal norms.